Hello all. Hope those who returned from the VIP tour had a good understanding of how iconic this place is. I think my favourite fact from the tour that I learned was I think it was Pink Floyd used this studio as its own personal car park for I think it was well over a decade. It was fantastic. So this is also Pink Floyd's car park. This is our penultimate panel of the afternoon. I can't believe I'm saying it's gone very, very fast. And I'm delighted to be joined by three brilliant marketing leaders. This panel concludes the formal part of the event before we go on to the B2B CMO, Future B2B CMO 100 award ceremony. But there is always a reason why I like to close our events on this topic. It's because it's another big sticking point for marketing leaders, or any leader really, which is not just what to prioritize, but how to prioritize, given that everything is a priority in this poly-priority economy. And that is my own term, and I will copyright that. But I'm joined by Mark, Preeti, and Utkarsh. Preeti, I'm going to come to you first, if I may. Let's just set the scene. It'd be great to sort of introduce who you are, IFS, and what you've been getting up to. You've had a very, very busy few months at IFS, collectively. What are you prioritizing? Let's start there. Let's go around the panel. What are you prioritizing? And then we'll get to the whys. And then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll get to the art of prioritization.
Yes, so like you said, we've had a very few busy years actually here at IFS on an impressive growth journey, double-digit growth for quite a few years now, and that continues at IFS, and we continue to grow through organically and more recently through mergers and acquisitions as well. So, but the question that a lot of people here in this audience, I'm sure, also ask is, who is IFS, right? So that's been one of our biggest challenges or opportunities, as I'd like to call it, is how do we prioritize our brand awareness and growing our brand awareness in a market that is so fast changing, but also to represent how significant of a company that we've become. So if I then think about our own marketing functions and how that then translates into that, growth is a prioritization for us, and that links to a number of factors. More importantly, scalable growth, sustainable growth, but also when I think about our teams, how do we provide stability in a fast-changing environment? So, all really big priorities for me as a leader in our marketing organization, but also as part of our business as well, and how marketing stays relevant and provides that value as we continue that growth trajectory as a business.
Fantastic. Utkarsh, we just heard from Preeti some great figures there.
Yeah, so for us as well, we operate in tech business, tech services, in particular engineering services. And if we reflect back on 2023 as an industry, we did witness growth, but we do see the rate of growth slowing down with an anticipation that it will bounce back in the coming quarters. And that's when, so going back to the fundamentals of marketing, prioritizing growth and innovation both together, because as a marketing business, we can keep pace up with the growth, but you got to be innovative, especially if there are cost pressures, especially if there are things that you need to slow down for now, but you need to pick up in 2024. And as B2B sales cycles are at least 2 quarters long enough, what I do today will yield me results in 2024, as one of the previous speakers said. So both growth and innovation are priorities for us, especially looking at the way things are changing. Even small things like LinkedIn algorithm has changed. So how do you keep up pace with those things as a marketing function to get the best, do more for less is something that we are focusing on as a function.
Brill. Mark, let's add to that.
So I'm a CMO at a fintech company, and while there's lots of change and lots of opportunities for considering different priorities for me and my team, I know the reality is that our customers are experiencing a lot more change where they are. And so I try to make our priority really understanding where the customers are and ensuring that we can be relevant to their needs. They have choices, and quite reasonably. They don't worry about what tech I'm using, what my team looks like, what our sales goals are. They have their own problems. And if we can't make ourselves relevant to them, then all of our priorities, all our internal priorities go out. So we have to make the customer need and the customer pain points our first priority.
And what's that process been like, almost not pivoting to that position, but amalgamating these priorities to focus it on the customer?
It's a challenge because in any organization, people are naturally inward looking. Sales focuses on the numbers. MarTech focuses on the technology. Customer support concentrates on the tickets they're getting. And trying, and to what Matt was saying before, being part of that leadership team and not tucked away in sales is very important for a marketing leader, because you can help to change that whole aspect of the organization and the whole organization's focus by bringing the customer back into the conversation again and again and again, because people will naturally forget.
Okay. Preeti, Utkarsh, you both sort of said growth is a priority for next year. Let's drill a bit deeper into what that means, though, because different companies are different and you might be approaching it different ways. Do you mind explaining how you're approaching growth as a priority? What are you prioritizing within that growth?
And I think we were discussing beforehand, before we came on, like every company is at a different stage. You're facing different factors. Your growth, a small percentage growth or big percentage growth, it's still really important for the company that you're in. So, how do you turn that into reality? So when I think about growth, specifically in my function, there's two areas as marketers that, the levers that we impact: demand generation and brand awareness. So when I think about the demand generation piece, some of our speakers touched on it before today. Yes, we need to go and grow our net new logos, enter into key markets that we want to dominate. But equally, how do we grow within our install base? How do we retain our customers, expand our footprint, and how do we do more of that organic growth within our own company? So, install base is a huge focus for us at IFS. We've got such a rich customer portfolio, and those companies themselves are growing. They're embracing technology. They're embracing a lot of the things that we've talked about today in terms of AI, and how do they then become more innovative. So how do we support that? How do we support our customers on that journey? And that's really important to us and all companies. How do you keep your customers as part of your family? So looking at our retention and expansion strategies, and how marketing can deepen engagement and relationship within our base is a really important factor for us in terms of growth. And then I think with net new, it's about, and this links quite closely to brand awareness, as everything does, but it's how do we dominate the markets that we really care about. I mean, at the beginning of the year, every company, every department sits down and says, okay, here's our key markets. These are the areas we want to grow in. These are the markets we want to break into. But how do you make that real? US market for us, as for many companies, is such an important marketplace to be doing business in as a global company. But it's also the hardest market to elevate your brand in, unless you're, the big names, the SAPs, the Microsofts, the Salesforce. But so much investment has gone into that. And if I narrow down and prioritize in terms of what we want to do in brand awareness, it is break into the US market. We've got a great customer base there, but we need to do more. And it's something, I've just come back from a quite an intensive tour of some of the US sites that we want to explore and look at, okay, how do we put our name up in lights? And that's just taking just some few examples of what we're looking at from a marketing perspective.
Fantastic. That was really interesting. Thank you.
It's like for us, it's like a trinity. You have got three things that you need to come together. Definitely, what first is what customer priorities are, as Mark said. Then what are sales priorities, and they need to match with each other. Marketing priorities cannot be different from customers and sales priority. So we have to look at those two areas first, and then marketing priorities, depending on what markets do we go, what are those industries we need to focus on. Yes, cost of acquiring a new customer is always higher than building relationship with an existing customer. So that remains 60% of investments or focus is over there, whereas 40% goes into recruiting or acquiring new customers, because you cannot take your eyes off on the net new. And there are hunters and farmers in any structure or sales model. You need to cater to both of them. But I think aligning our priorities with sales and customers is what we focus on.
Okay.
The trick with all of that, though, is that prioritization and picking those markets and working with sales is, where do you not go? Where do you say no to again and again and again? And you do let people down.
That's the hardest thing to do.
It is absolutely tough, and you have to be brutal about it, because they need to understand at the start of the financial year, whatever the financial year is, that they're not the priority, and you'll do bits and pieces for them, but they're not going to get the big investment. We're not going to create the big demand in your market space, and it's a really tough thing to do.
But I think that might come into when you ask about challenges as well, is if we look at our priorities as a marketing organization, we've talked about alignment with sales and the customer organization. Let's face it, nobody has the same set of priorities. It's great when you sit down and strategize, but the execution piece is key. And if your priorities aren't aligning, this is the challenge we are facing when we're in execution mode.
Yeah. So you have to align at that leadership level across the different teams, and then you have to communicate it really, really well internally, so that people have the right expectations and know what they're getting and know what to be ready for, because if the investment is coming to them, they better be ready to catch it. Otherwise, it's not going to come back.
How do you create like an adaptable priority communication plan then? Because it's not as if it's a straight road in this economy, and we have to be adaptable and flexible to certain external and internal factors. What does that look like then? Because my next question was going to be on the art of prioritization, which I think is a skill that all of us need to manage, regardless of what your role is. It's a really good point, Mark, but there has to go a point where at some point that changes.
So if I add to Mark's point in terms of prioritization, I think it's a 2x2 matrix for me, where I'm looking at the market opportunity, and I'm also looking at ability to win. If there's no ability for us as a business to win there, for us it's better to deprioritize rather than prioritize it over something where we can win it easier than what we cannot win.
To your low-hanging fruits.
Yeah, and then as far as things change, the speed of business and the pace of business will change, and there are like in marketing, sometimes we go after shiny objects, like metaverse, for example. Last year, this year, metaverse nobody's talking about it. As a business, also a lot of tech companies established metaverse practices and units, but things have changed for them as well. So I think you need a cadence and governance with the sales and the business heads on regular basis, something that we do on weekly, fortnightly, and monthly basis, and look at what we are doing and measuring. Is it working or not? If it is not working, do we need to change things in the next quarter? So I think strong governance would enable it.
No, I totally agree. I think, yes, governance is important, and Mark touched on it as well in terms of communication. And I think, again, things that we've touched upon through the day, it's asking the question why, right? So we've got our prioritization, we do our cadences, we do our QBRs, but and it's easy to say, look, we've set a path, now let's just go on it, because we want to achieve and we want to give our teams a sense of achievement. And so if you keep changing that path, sometimes you don't get that sense of achievement. So I think when it comes back to if something is being asked of us, okay, whatever, you start off with your 10-6 priorities for the beginning of the year. And I think we just need to remind, let's just do a sense check. why are we doing this, and is it still relevant? And it's okay if it changes, but we just need to, as leaders, communicate that back. And if something new comes along, does it fit into those things? Is it urgent? Is it important? Is it going to get us to that business goal? And it's just taking the time to ask those questions, and we've just got to remind ourselves to be doing that in these cadences.
Again, I think it's that balance between the strategy and the priorities, and a good. You're hopefully not revisiting the strategy every couple of months. The priorities within that will move around, but I think the why gives us an ability to keep aligned to the strategy as it stands. Why are we doing this? Does it support? If we do this activity, will it support this overall growth that the rest of the business is driving toward? And you think about your example of trying to do more in the U.S. Well, marketing doing more in the U.S. on its own isn't going to do it. You need to have the product, you've got to have the salespeople, you've got to have the services people, you've got to have the partner model and everything else. So, and if that's the strategy, marketing is just a piece of that. And so if someone comes along and says, yeah, but France, it's like, well, not really where the business strategy is. And you can use that if you're well aligned with the strategy, if marketing is part of the broader strategy of the business, you can use that to your advantage and control the, frankly, never-ending set of new priorities, which what I refer to as random acts of marketing. Because there's always new ideas. There's always new things we can try. There's always new technologies we can implement.
Yeah.
You have to bring it back to the strategy.
I have someone in my team, actually, who's always asking me the why question, and this person will remain nameless. But I'm like, come on, you get it. I've gone through this so many times. But actually, it's a good thing because it keeps me on my toes. And, said individual also said, yeah, but this is our set of priorities. And we've gone from 1 to 5. And these 5 are that other team's set of priority. But they're in a different order. So my number 1 is that person's number 5. So how do we get that to align? And again, these are the things that we need to be able to answer or come back on. And it goes back to how you prioritize, which I know is...
So what are you not prioritizing?
Gosh.
I'm not prioritizing building a lot of generic content using Gen AI.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, it's, again, fascinating conversations you can have around the topic of AI. Some of it is new, but some of it isn't. And again, we've had these discussions at work. Right, everybody go off and have a look at how are we going to become more efficient and using AI. So you can quickly start to jump into, we're going to create loads of stuff, but we've already said we need to do less. We need to be more focused. We need to be more targeted. So actually, is creating loads of content going to help with that and make our lives more difficult? So definitely agree, Mark, saying, but it's it's
I'm going to use it. I'm just not going to generate a lot of
Or prioritize
generic content around it.
Utkarsh, I want to come to you next on the next part of the question around 2024. What's keeping you up at night? Either from anxiety, from excitement, through a mixture of both?
I think I'll wear my marketer hat and say what keeps me awake at night always is the thumb of my target audience. It is scrolling too fast. Keeps on scrolling, jump to the next thing. So whatever, as a marketer, I'm investing in, if they're not taking notice of it and it is not relevant for them, I'm not making them to stop and look at my organization, look at my brand, then we're not doing our job. And that's why the next morning, if I can come up with certain ideas which I can brainstorm with my team and make that thumb stop and look at my brand first, then I think it's a win for us. So it is the thumb of my target audience which is keeping me awake at night.
Okay. Preeti, Mark, any further thoughts on the thumb?
Well, I'd say someone said earlier that you have to be close to your CFO. Really important in marketing, maybe have a really, really good relationship with the CFO and really understand the financials and what's going on in sales and all that stuff. You've got to be a numbers person. And what keeps me awake about that is I know that every good CFO is looking at that marketing spend line and knowing that they can make their lives easier by dropping the marketing spend line onto earnings. Every CFO, and you know what, I don't blame them. Which means that if you are not having those conversations about the fact that there is value and that there's a money into outcome impact, that it will go away because it will be easier for the CFO to drop it to the bottom line.
For those of you who read my editor's letter, apologies, I'm about to drop an anecdote I've already repeated, but I actually had lunch with the CFO a few weeks ago who said something very similar, but was this: I would get on with my CMO far better if, instead of getting a plan of what you need to the exact nth degree to get that thumb to scroll, or maybe for that growth trajectory or for the US expansion you so need, they would rather have 3 separate plans, one best in class, one quite good, and one good enough. That's all they want. They just want to know where they stand on that line, and if there's room for maneuver, they'll give it to you, and if not, at least that CMO has shown him the flexibility that he needs to mend the relationship.
And that conversation will drive your prioritization quarter by quarter through the year, depending on how all the other numbers are looking, whether they have the room on that bottom line.
So what keeps me up? or what's my duvet flip? I watched this little thing on social, and it was called "What's your duvet flip? What gets you up in the morning?"
Okay,
as well. So I thought
that
that's quite cool. But yeah, either way, what motivates me and what keeps me motivated to get up and go into run our function each day. Let me start with excitement. Like I talked about growth, so this the art of the possible of what we can do within our function is what is my duvet flip, is what gets me excited about what we can achieve with the great teams that we have and the access that we have to tech and knowledge, and how we bring that into our organization, and an organization that is just so open to embracing that for me is hugely exciting. What makes me anxious is, again, just touching on your points here, is for me it's execution. Like, we can strategize the hell out of anything, but how are we going to execute, and how do we continue to show value to our customers, but also value to the business that gives us the seat at the table as marketeers? So that's all about how do we actually drive revenue, how do we win business, and demonstrate that marketing is doing that. So execution for me is the thing that keeps me up at night, and keeping a team motivated, because you don't want to churn through your team either. You want the best skill set. So making sure that I have a happy team. I have a team that's motivated to do the things that we have the opportunity to do.
Okay, fantastic. I'm not going to open up to questions per se, but this is an opportunity. We've got microphones. Does anyone want to share their priorities that we haven't discussed at all this afternoon or on this panel, which you think might be useful for us to chew over? It's quite perhaps a niche request, to be honest, but it just came to me that this might be a nice opportunity to do so. You don't have to. I've got loads of questions up my sleeve, so don't worry. No? Go on, David. Thank you.
Yeah, the key thing I want to do is to move away from the post-pandemic switch to events that we've had. Sorry. Everybody's pivoted to events. All of the stakeholders we have, they've got all these great ideas for events. We can do this event, that event. We can come to an amazing event like this, which is wonderful, or like some lousy event somewhere else. I really want to pivot us back to balancing integrated campaigns, digital campaigns, as Mark said, amazing content, not lousy generated content, and really get back to that kind of like, how's digital going to work for us in that post-pandemic world? So that's the big priority and the thing that keeps me awake.
Thanks, David. Yeah, Vicky.
Great, thank you. I was going to say the same thing, and just to go a little bit further, because a priority for myself and my team is deconstructing how our marketing teams are currently built. I'm about to embark on building a new marketing team with the skills we need, the people we need. Not thinking about people, but how are we going to? What do we need to really use data and AI to build those custom journeys, audience programs, not being led by events, not being led by digital, but actually having everything integrated together around the audiences. So we're using AI with our data to really measure ROI and to really track the journey and to understand how buyers buy in different segments. So very much what you said, what are our dormant accounts? Where are the white space? Where's the net new? Certain audiences within that as well, different profiles, even deeper. So going really, really deep. But for that, we need a very different marketing team. I need a different marketing team to deliver that. So it's not that we do an event and we just expect some pipe out of it. It's a very different world, and that's what my priority is now and in 2025 is building that team and using the data and AI to help.
I really love that because there's a really old school, new school thing to that. You're doing what is very traditional, ancient, old-fashioned marketing of really focusing on segments. You're just using all the new tools to do it even better and more efficiently and more accurately, and that's today's marketing.
I'm spending this quarter deprioritizing because we've got the same prioritization agenda. And I thought it was quite interesting when you asked the question, what are you not prioritizing? That was the longest silence on the stage. And I think that's what is hardest. I know what I want to prioritize next quarter, and to release the resources to do that, I have to switch things off. And that's taking quite a lot of effort to find what are the things we do and don't think about, that we and tackling some of the difficult conversations with some of the stakeholders to explain what we're going to stop doing.
Yeah, it's also your responsibility, isn't it? It's that responsibility of saying, no, this isn't a priority, and then down the line taking ownership of in case that does become that priority. But someone has to make
it's
that
a priority for somebody else, and so when you're deprioritizing, it's not, you have to have that conversation, don't you? And that's the hard bit.
Yeah, the alignment is hard.
Thank you. That's brilliant. I enjoyed those. I called to me actually also from David and Vicky's perspective the quote from Holly from the previous panel on, was it 6? I won't repeat the quote, but a high proportion of CEOs deem that their business model might be obsolete in 10 years. So clearly if their priority is thinking about the entire business, Vicky, you're thinking about the structure of the marketing team, that might actually upend all of your priorities in the following few years anyway. So perhaps it's taking a step back and having a bird's eye view of what you're even looking at and trying to do, rather than going back to just what's happening post-pandemic and we're thinking about to go back to what it was, because it's never going to go back to what it was. We've got time for one more question and then we'll break. And then I believe there's alcohol and soft drinks over there, and I don't want to get in the way of that. We are all meeting here, hopefully, next May 2024 in this very room, if all goes well. Given what we've discussed this afternoon, and this is across the whole afternoon, what do you hope we would have learned by May that we can start to ask ourselves in May? And I totally realise I'm asking you to do my job, but that's the question.
I think answer that in two ways. I think when we come back in May, I think a lot of us will have been able to trial and test some of the use cases that we've talked about in AI, and how that has catapulted some of the things that we wanted to do in the business, be that automation, be that more digital savvy, be that more aligned. How are we actually using AI, or some of the new things that we wanted to give a go with AI. I think if I look at my specific example of some of the things we're looking at now, I talked about we've made a lot of acquisitions in our company, for me, coming back in May is looking at, well, how have we onboarded those acquisitions? How have we prioritised and harmonised that prioritisation across our acquisitions and the next stage of our business growth as well? I mean, we're obviously thinking about 2026, so even beyond 2025. But again, I come back to what makes that real. And, you know, you've got to bring people on a journey. And when you acquire a company, you need to bring that company on the journey.
Yeah,
So
hopefully you're right. We'll have that test bed or at least early examples of what's not working, perhaps.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think as a marketer, we all will definitely become prompt engineer by 2024 if we've not become one. We've not tried it yet. But ChatGPT or generative AI is not going to solve my creativity problem. So it's a great opportunity for marketing function, because the bandwidth that gets released from using these generative AI tool, would love to see, can it go in being more creative ideas and execution. So I think how to become more creative is something that I would love to see when I come back in May 2022 and reflect back what programs we've done.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think similarly, you know, if we're not talking about AI as AI in May, then that is a massive win. I want to see, you know, just like we're not talking about big data and social media in exactly the same way. You know, social media is just another channel. Big data is about just doing good data analysis. And you know, when was the last time we had deep conversations about marketing data warehouses and things like that? You know, it eventually all the technology goes into the background, and the use cases and the benefits and the outcomes come back to the fore. And that's what I really want to see is that we get into, you know, it's just another tool that we use in doing great customer-centric marketing.
Fantastic. Well, you've heard it here first. Early insights into next May's agenda. Thank you all for your time this afternoon.
Thank you very much.